I titled today's devotion, Where is God's Army? And we're on day 326. We're on November the 22nd if you're following along on the calendar. And the featured verse today is Revelation 16:21. And huge hailstones, about 100 pounds each, came down from heaven upon men. And men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, because its plague was extremely severe. So yesterday I talked about the intensity of Act 3 in a movie. And so I asked this question, can you feel the intensity in today's morning rinse? John is literally watching a movie unfold. And I can imagine how fast his heartbeat must have been as he beheld the 7 angels making their appearance and then releasing God's wrath on the earth. I can imagine the chain of emotions in his heart as he watches in his mind's eye take in the first 6 bowls of judgment. And despite these judgments transpiring across the globe, a mass awakening will not occur. Instead, people will continue to blaspheme God due to the evil and hatred that have overtaken their hearts. And you would think that God's been given them so many chances, and yet they're not heeding. As if evil could not get any thicker or the climax of this vision any stronger, John sees a global army forming with the sole purpose to battle against Jesus. I wonder how he felt watching the ultimate battle of good versus evil materialize right before his eyes. And in fact, in Revelation 16:13, John watches how Satan's global army is actually enlisted. There are 3 frog-like demons that come out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, and they go into the world to gather the soldiers. And some scholars believe that the beast is not actually a being or a person, but rather a global system of control. And this is where you just have to keep diving into Revelation and reading commentary about what people believe and kind of their explanation of things, which is why it's so important to know what your pastor believes and read books. Like I mentioned the other day about, I've mentioned several times throughout my podcast about Pastor Westlake, but I specifically mentioned it yesterday. Sorry, Haley. I specifically mentioned him again 2 days ago because he wrote a book called Daniel and Revelation. And if you read that book or you take some courses, then you'll understand things a little bit more. But John watches how Satan's global army is enlisted and these symbolic things that were written and this global system of control. Now, whoever takes this mark will be easily found and probably demon-possessed by this time. And all who follow these demons to war, which that war is called the Battle of Armageddon. And when this global army is positioned for war, this 7th bowl is released, and a voice from heaven says, "It is done." You will read that in Revelation 16, verse 17. Now, up to this point in today's morning rinse, John has been observing a more of a high-level view of the events leading up to this final battle. And then in chapter 17, the angels take him in for a close-up shot to give him more detail about what led up to this battle. And unfortunately, the corruption includes the harlot, which symbolizes what many scholars believe is a picture of the false church. In the world government and the false church, actually have a great relationship with each other, helping to surmount the evil in the world. However, the false church becomes so fake that even those ruling with the Antichrist will turn on them. And you'll read that in chapter 17, verse 16. But where is God's army? Just wait. That's coming. But the sad part about it is the false church. And I am seeing this actually even today, where it's growing, and there's actually more and more churches that are taking a stance that is not necessarily aligning up with what is in the Bible. And so that is what this false church is. It's a church that people follow, but it's false because it's not truly what the Bible is teaching. And a lot of people will be deceived, and it is going to allow for more evil to come onto this earth, which is why I said that, the false church and the government have a great relationship, and the two of them together will help to surmount the evil in the world and make it even more, grand. And this is where the Battle of Armageddon, and what we're reading about today in today's morning rinse. So today's challenge to dig deeper is to ask yourself the question, do you know of anyone in your life or in your, neighborhood or whatever? Do you know anyone who blasphemes God? And your challenge today is to pray for them. Yesterday we prayed for the missionaries. Today we're praying for those who are instilling the pain on those who are speaking out or praying or trying to live for God. Pray for those who blaspheme God. And remember, we do not fight against flesh and blood. So I want you to pray for them, pray for their souls, pray for their salvation, because they are completely getting influenced by demonic activity. And those people who are out there and who are mocking what is happening in the faith or saying negative things about God, those people are getting influenced by demonic activity, and we need to pray for them. So that is your challenge today, is to look in your life and see if there's anyone, or if you know of anyone who blasphemes God. Pray for them and continually remember that we do not fight against flesh and blood. Now, when you are pulling out your journal tonight and you are having your evening reflection, write down how you are feeling about this high-level study of the book of Revelation, and as you're walking through some of the things that we're talking about and some of the things that you're learning about, how do you feel? Are there things that, especially in this moment where we're reading these chapters where there's kind of an high climax of what's happening, and can you actually see some of the things happening right now in our world happening? And are you starting to see how that our government and the things that are happening in our country and even globally are kind of a precursor? Like, things are actually getting set up, and it's happening at a fast rate. And some people actually even believe that the AI type system is going to contribute to the end times. And so I want you to write down how you're feeling about this high-level study of Revelation, and if there's anything at all that you have gleaned, or that is something that you are new to or reminded of. When we read the scriptures, we often get reminded of things that are occurring. So the question is, where is God's army at this moment in the tribulation period? We'll just wait. Now, I hope that you are encouraged, and that I hope that you are proud of yourself for reading this book. And, like I said earlier, some people have never read this book before in the Bible. And so I'm proud of you for following along and for listening and trying to understand it a little bit more. And I just hope that you are encouraged. And if you don't have my devotional, the link is in the show notes, as well as on the YouTube link in the description. And I hope that if there's somebody in your life that wants to read the book of Revelation, they can follow this plan and at their own pace. It doesn't have to be this daily thing. It can be following along at their own pace. So I hope that encourages you. And until tomorrow, keep rinsing, reflecting, and repeating. God bless you.